Because I did not get the chance to properly play Golden Sun yet, I'd figured to review a simple game in the last minute. Of course, it's either that or nothing. I'll get into finishing off my review of Golden Sun when I have enough experience with it to give it a proper overview. Back in the early 80s, every town would want to have a recreation center. There was things like pinball games, pool tables, you get the idea. There were also the video games, but not a lot of people went to play the video games on the arcade machines, or games in general. The games did not give a major impact onto people back then, but once games started to get more advanced, it was allowing the arcade machines to get more attention. Space Invaders and Asteroid was some of the big gaming titles that stepped up gaming in its development. It was around this time games was starting to become something you could call a culture. In other words, people were starting to pay attention to video games. Toru Iwatani came up with a new idea for this one game. He did not want his game to be violent, and he also wanted to make his game so that it could not only appeal to males, but also to females. And thus Pac-Man was born, and the gaming industry would change forever. The idea of Pac-Man's design came from when Toru Iwatani took a slice of pizza in a restaurant, and that obviously represents the philosophical idea of Pac-Man's design. The design of Pac-Man is done in such a way that not only can males get attracted by it, but so can females. The ghosts and Pac-Man himself could be found to be adorable for some, mostly females, but it could also be approached as neutral in its look by others, mostly males in this case. This allowed Pac-Man to reach into a wider audience. Before Pac-Man, there was no game that properly established the main character of a game as an actual character. Space Invaders and Asteroids only showed the players as ships moving around the screen. Pac-Man felt like something that in person you could relate to easier. Pac-Man, from my awareness, was for this reason the first real gaming mascot. In the future, companies like Nintendo and Sega would take inspiration from this attitude of marketing in gaming by making their own mascots with their own charms. Pac-Man was a marketing tool that spread like crazy. I'm not just talking in gaming. Pac-Man's face was even slapped on products in stores at the time. Very much everyone was just going all crazy about Pac-Man. Graphically, the game looks good for its time being. However, I would in honor argue that the arcade version of this game still has its graphics hold up, because unlike the games before Pac-Man, I feel like that its simple look has an actual appeal rather than looking like flat out puke. There is no music in the game, just sound effects, but the sound effects for what they do does their job well. The sound effect sounds good, memorable and iconic all at the same time. From the iconic title when you boot up the game to the game over sound effects. Well, at least I feel that for the original arcade version of the game. However, I digress. It might just be me, but I feel that those sound effects brought some kind of personality out of Pac-Man. I'm glad Pac-Man is not one of those games that fell for the trap into letting it have generic and typical uninspiring game sound effects. I think that is another thing that takes part of what makes people remember Pac-Man so well to this day. The gameplay is simple and straightforward. Not just simple but also fun. And for my concern, this is another reason that took part of Pac-Man's ability to reach a wider audience. You go about a labyrinth-like place as ghosts are chasing after you. One hit from one of those ghosts and you're dead. So you gotta be careful. The red ghost is called Blinky. The pink one is called Pinky, obviously. The blue one is Inky. And the orange one is Clyde. Huh, that is weird. Am I the only one who noticed that Clyde is the only ghost that does not have his name end by an I? I wonder if the developers did that on purpose. Anyways, as you get chased by the ghosts, you're able to avoid them by moving with the up, left, right, and down arrow pressing. You collect those yellow-like balls, so-called pellets, followed by the power pellets that allows Pac-Man to become unstoppable for a certain time limit, as he can eat himself through the ghosts. Then lastly, there are the fruits like cherry berries that increases your point to 100 or upwards. The game is fun to play. You don't just blindly go about the labyrinth as if it's all a cakewalk. There's actual thinking and effort behind it from the player, unless the player is playing bad on purpose. You need to time your reflexes well in order for you to not lose so early on. Pac-Man, in my opinion, also falls in the category of memorization. Anyways, whenever you're feeling like just playing a simple video game for the sake of it, I'd say give Pac-Man a chance if you have not already. Maybe simple, but it's surprisingly fun and addicting for most. Of course, most has probably played this game by this point as it's a classic, but I digress. There are crazy stories of the Pac-Man game, like how someone played this game for 6 hours throughout without dying, and it made the game break. In fact, the game became so broken that very much all ghosts and paths were being destroyed, and that guy won a prize for it. In fact, Pac-Man was life-changing for him because of this. He got himself known from this game even though he did not create the game itself. While Pac-Man started off on an arcade machine, he did eventually also show up on home consoles by his major success. Whatever version you play of the game Pac-Man, just do yourself the favor and don't play the Atari one. The version I was playing that you're seeing on screen is the NES game. But in my opinion, if you compare it side by side with the arcade one, it's still essentially the same game. So it should not matter to you too much on which version you play. Except when it comes to the Atari one. Stay away from that one, I'm fucking serious. Pac-Man was or may still be the king of arcades. Sure, there were arcades like Donkey Kong, but when you ask the average person about an early arcade in the 80s, Pac-Man will pop up in their minds. Pac-Man is not just a game, it's a piece of art that defined and brought the new media that has tons of potential to justice.